In the bustling heart of New York City, the air was thick with anticipation, crackling with a sense of urgency and collective hope. The iconic venue, a historic theater adorned with ornate details, echoed the energy of a crowd gathered for a much-anticipated speech by the fiery activist Adam Mamdani. Known for his revolutionary ideas and passionate rhetoric, Mamdani had been making waves, advocating for radical change that many believed could reshape society. But tonight, he wasn't just there to rally his supporters. He had his eyes set on a formidable opponent, Karoline. The audience buzzed with excitement, fans sporting T-shirts emblazoned with Mamdani's slogans, eagerly discussing his previous victories and the promise of a brighter future. Unbeknownst to many, Karoline was not just another activist. She was a strategist, an articulate thinker who had spent years honing her ability to dissect arguments with surgical precision. While Mamdani thrived on emotional fervor, Karoline preferred to build her case on reason, data, and logical consistency. As Mamdani took the stage, the crowd erupted, their cheers echoing off the walls. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a palpable sense of purpose. He began with an impassioned plea, painting a vivid picture of a society in turmoil, a web of oppression, systemic inequality, and a system rigged against the masses. With each word, he fueled the fire in his supporters, his voice rising and falling dramatically, pulling people into his vision of revolution. "We stand on the brink of change," he declared, his hands gesturing emphatically. "Tonight, we unite to challenge the forces that seek to divide us. Together, we can achieve the impossible." The audience, mesmerized by his charisma, erupted into applause and chants, swept up in the tide of fervor. But amidst the sea of enthusiastic faces, Karoline sat quietly, her mind racing with ideas and counterarguments. She meticulously scrutinized every word that poured from Mamdani's lips, contemplating the implications of his call to arms. Karoline's keen intellect recognized that while his vision was noble, it lacked a pragmatic framework. His fiery rhetoric might ignite passion, but would it translate into sustainable change? Would his revolution simply lead to chaos without a well-thought-out plan for a post-revolutionary society? In that moment, she resolved to engage in a battle of ideas, one rooted not in dramatic flair, but in thoughtful dialogue. Her strategy was firm: to challenge Mamdani's narrative at the right moment, using his own words against him. As she scribbled notes on her phone, capturing key phrases and assertions for reference, Karoline felt a sense of calm wash over her. She was prepared to dismantle his revolution quietly but effectively, arguing that meaningful change required structure, community building, and collaboration rather than impulsive upheaval. While the crowd continued to roar in support of Mamdani, internally, Karoline was assembling her case, ready to present a vision that prioritized constructive action over rhetoric. She envisioned a society not only free from oppression, but also rich in opportunity and empowerment. It was time for her voice to rise, to challenge the prevailing winds of Mamdani's vision with a call for a more inclusive approach to change. As Mamdani's speech reached its fever pitch, Karoline knew the moment to act was approaching. The stage was set for a historic confrontation, one that would resonate far beyond the walls of that theater. In an age where the loudest voices often eclipsed the most reasonable, Karoline was determined to shift the narrative, armed with clarity, conviction, and a commitment to genuine progress. With her heart pounding, she braced herself for the moment she would rise and demand to be heard. As Mamdani began his speech, the atmosphere in the bustling theater changed, thickening with the weight of his powerful words. He painted a vivid picture of a society in turmoil, illustrating a landscape marred by oppression, systemic inequality, and a framework that seemed rigged against the very people who needed it most. The imagery was stark and poignant, invoking feelings of outrage and urgency among the assembled crowd. Eyes widened and fists clenched as he spoke, each pulse of his voice resonating deep within the hearts of those listening. "You feel it, don't you?" Mamdani continued, his voice rising with intensity. The frustration over the inequality that separates us, the injustice that festers in our streets, and the indifference of those in power who fail to hear our cries. This is our moment to rise. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience as he gave life to their deepest frustrations, voicing sentiments they had long felt but struggled to articulate. Nodding in agreement, many shouted slogans of support, chanting Mamdani's rallying cries that echoed off the theater's ornate walls. He spoke passionately about collective action and the urgency of radical revolt against the status quo, calling upon the audience to unite, to fight back, and to demand change. With every stirring phrase, he fueled their flames of discontent, reminding them that history was forged by those who dared to challenge the status quo, those who were willing to push back against oppressive forces. As he gestured emphatically, painting his vision of a revolution that would dismantle the current system, the audience exploded in applause. They were mesmerized, captivated by his energy, conviction, and ability to galvanize the masses. "Tonight, we stand at the crossroads of our future," he declared, his voice echoing through the venue with a powerful resonance that made the audience leap to their feet. "Together, we must rise against the forces that seek to divide us, destroy our spirit, and undermine our potential. Together, we can achieve the impossible." The crowd erupted like a volcano, chanting and cheering, swept up in the wave of revolution he promised. His fervent imagery and magnetic presence were infectious. You could feel the electricity in the air. Hearts beat in unison with the rhythm of his words, and dreams of change danced in every mind packed in that theater. They could almost taste victory. It was palpable, yet it was only a momentary euphoric high. But amid the excitement and fervor, there was a quieter presence. In the shadows, Karoline was quietly absorbing everything. While others were swept away in the emotional tide, she remained calm and composed, her analytical mind diligently parsing through Mamdani's impassioned call to action. To her, the fervent scene unfolding felt like a play with a deeply flawed script. Karoline watched intently, a mixture of concern and determination brewing within her. She understood the power of inspiration and its ability to propel people into action. Yet she was acutely aware that passion alone is often insufficient for lasting change. As Mamdani's words electrified the crowd, she began to mentally catalog the flaws in his argument. Flaws that wouldn't be immediately apparent, but were critical for sustainable progress. His vision, while dramatic and stirring, raised questions in her mind. What about accountability? What came after the revolt? Would it end in chaos? These were questions he brushed aside in favor of emotional appeal, but Karoline knew that real transformation called for a balance between aspiration and pragmatism. The audience may have been ready to follow Mamdani into battle, but she recognized her duty was to ground that passion in reality, offering a counter-narrative that would ultimately ensure authenticity and efficacy. In that moment, Karoline resolved to take action, to challenge Mamdani's rhetoric from a place of reason and depth, ensuring that an important dialogue emerged from the fervor of the night. The stakes were high, and the future was unclear, but she was ready to rise to that challenge. With each word from Mamdani, she felt her own resolve strengthen. It was time for her voice to join the fray. She just needed the right moment to speak. As the fervor of Mamdani's speech filled the room, igniting the passions of his audience, Karoline sat thoughtfully in the back, her mind whirring with ideas and strategies. She understood the immense power of rhetoric and charisma, especially in an environment charged with emotion like this one. But she also knew that the loudest voice does not always win the battle of ideas. Rather, it is the voice that resonates most deeply with clarity and substance that can truly affect change. While the audience was swept up in Mamdani's visceral appeal to revolt, Karoline meticulously deconstructed each of his arguments in real time. With her phone in hand, she scribbled down notes, assessing his every claim and highlighting key phrases that she believed needed scrutiny. Although she felt the allure of Mamdani's call to arms, She could not ignore the fundamental flaws woven into his passionate pleas. Mamdani spoke of uprising and transformation, calling for collective action against the powers that oppress the masses. Yet, to Karoline, his vision appeared naive. His passionate rhetoric lacked a practical framework. What would happen after the uprising? Did Mamdani have a concrete plan to guide them forward, or was he merely inciting an emotional reaction? She immediately recognized this as a significant gap in his argument. With her analytical background, she instinctively began to formulate counterarguments. Would chaos reign in the aftermath of revolt? Would power simply shift from one group to another, resulting in the oppressed becoming the oppressors? She pondered as she listened intently. These questions echoed in her mind, driving her purpose. She knew that if she presented a counter-narrative, it had to champion sustainable change rather than fleeting rebellion, a change grounded in community building and constructive dialogue. While Mamdani's message was undoubtedly compelling, it lacked the substance needed to nurture the kind of systemic change that would benefit society in the long run. Karoline envisioned a future where collaboration and inclusivity were prioritized, rather than one born from chaos and destruction. Karoline's heart raced as the moments ticked by. Would she have the opportunity to challenge his narrative before the audience descended into blind support? As Mamdani's fervent words continued to echo in the theater, she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She needed to capitalize on the audience's emotional state, but redirect it toward a more thoughtful approach to change. In her notes, she crafted talking points that would resonate with the same audience that was now rallying around Mamdani. She envisioned a future where grassroots organizations collaborated with local governments to address the very injustices Mamdani highlighted, working within the system to bring about meaningful reform. Revolution can mean transformation, but we must have a plan. A revolution rooted in dialogue can heal and empower, she scribbled with urgency. The stakes felt monumental. Karoline understood that it wasn't just about being heard. It was about ensuring that her message took root in the minds and hearts of those who were eager for change. She took a deep breath, steeling herself as she realized that the moment to act was inching closer. She would wait for the right opportunity, an opening in Mamdani's speech, a moment when the crowd might still be buzzing with excitement, but open to new ideas. Karoline resolved to be that voice in the room, juxtaposing Mamdani's fiery rhetoric with her reasoned perspective. With each heartbeat, she felt more certain of her mission, to bring a balanced approach to the struggle for social justice, ensuring that action was paired with accountability and a vision grounded in practicality. It was time for her voice to rise, one that championed a future where passion met purpose. Just when the crowd was at its peak, Mamdani made a bold move. He invited his supporters to join him on stage, transforming his passionate speech into a powerful visual rallying cry. As he gestured vigorously, his fervent supporters lifted their fists high, chanting slogans of revolution that echoed through the historic venue. The atmosphere was electric, pulsating with a sense of urgency and collective determination. The audience, charged by Mamdani's charisma and vision, were ready to embrace a call to arms, swept up in the whirlwind of emotion. But as the applause swelled, a calm presence emerged from the shadows. Karoline, who had been listening intently, stood up, her voice ringing clear and strong. "But what happens after the revolution?" she called out, her tone cutting through the excited noise and commanding attention. A hush fell over the crowd, and the energy in the room shifted. This wasn't the reaction Mamdani had anticipated. For a moment, he looked momentarily taken aback, his momentum interrupted as he prepared to counter her challenge. Karoline seized the moment, her composure unwavering. She had waited for this opportunity, understanding that Mamdani's impassioned rhetoric needed a counterbalance. "What's the plan for tomorrow?" she pressed, her voice steady and resolute. There was a gravity to her words that made the audience pause, each individual exchanging glances, reflecting on the question posed. Mamdani's call for revolt was stirring, but Karoline's query opened a space for critical reflection. With laser-like focus, she introduced her vision, one that emphasized constructive dialogue, community building, and empowering solutions rather than mere destruction. A revolution is not just about tearing down. It's about building something better, a system that truly serves the people, she explained, her words methodically composed. There was no anger, only a deep commitment to ensuring that the emotional energy that had been ignited could lead to real, sustainable progress. Her thoughtful approach contrasted sharply with Mamdani's fiery prophecies of chaos. While he painted a picture of uprising and turmoil, Karoline advocated for a vision steeped in stability and accountability. We can fight against the oppression he speaks of, but we must also ensure that we do not lose ourselves in the process, she continued, articulating her thoughts with clarity and conviction. What we need is not just a moment of rebellion, but a framework for lasting change, a pathway that considers our future, our communities, and our collective well-being. As she spoke, she gestured to members of the audience, grounding her argument in the belief that every individual has a role to play. We need to harness our collective power through collaboration, through engaging with our communities to devise solutions that lift everyone up. When we talk about revolution, let's talk about how we can create inclusive systems that dismantle oppression while also promoting empowerment. Let's unite to build a society where justice is intertwined with opportunity. The crowd began to stir, contemplating her perspective. Murmurs rippled through the audience as they weighed her insights against the fervent call for upheaval. Karoline's message resonated deeply, awakening a sense of possibility that transcended mere slogans. In that poignant moment, Karoline illustrated that true power lies not just in passionate revolt, but in thoughtful action, a belief that was becoming increasingly clear to the audience as they considered the potential for a future founded on collaboration rather than chaos. The tensions between them, Mamdani's radical ambition and Karoline's pragmatic vision, created a rich dialogue that sparked a deeper examination of the values underlying their shared quest for change. As the echoes of her words lingered in the air, the stage was set for a deeper conversation, one that could define the revolutionary path ahead. In the days that followed the electrifying speech and the pivotal exchange between Mamdani and Karoline, social media erupted with activity. Clips of the event were shared by thousands on platforms ranging from TikTok to Twitter, capturing the dramatic moments of Mamdani's passionate call to arms juxtaposed with Karoline's calm and measured challenge. Hashtags like hashtag Revolution and Reason and hashtag Power of Dialogue trended worldwide as users dissected the exchange, sparking debates and discussions that resonated deeply with audiences across the globe. What was initially intended to be a night of unwavering support for Mamdani began to unravel into a broader conversation about the nature of activism itself. People started voicing their concerns regarding the sustainability of Mamdani's proposals, questioning what a revolution without a plan might mean for the fabric of society. Was it enough to simply challenge the status quo without a clear understanding of what should replace it? The allure of revolt was enticing. But as Karoline's arguments circulated online, many began to reconsider their support for an approach that lacked foresight. Karoline, almost unwittingly, became a beacon for those who found themselves craving a more balanced approach to change. Her calm demeanor and logical points stood in stark contrast to the dramatic flair of Mamdani's oratory, drawing in individuals who resonated with the idea that real change required more than just passion. It demanded thoughtful dialogue and community-driven solutions. Her words sparked a shift in perspective, steering conversations towards the necessity of sustainable activism. Support for her vision quickly gained traction. Activists who once rallied solely behind Mamdani began to explore Karoline's proposed ideas, discussing the importance of collective responsibility and the need for a multifaceted strategy to enact meaningful change. Karoline's audience surged as she shared insights that combined idealism with pragmatism, reminding people that a revolution rooted in sustainable principles could still be revolutionary. Meanwhile, Mamdani was left to grapple with the consequences of that evening. The outpouring of support for Karoline, coupled with the critical questions surrounding his vision, forced him to confront a crucial decision: to adapt and integrate Karoline's ideas into his own movement for a more inclusive approach, or risk being left behind in a rapidly evolving dialogue on activism. As he reviewed social media reactions and the content of discussions swirling around him, Mamdani began to realize the importance of fostering an inclusive conversation, not just one that rallied hearts, but also engaged minds. He understood that for any movement to endure, it must evolve, and that radical transformation cannot happen in a vacuum. Reflecting on the events, Mamdani recognized an essential truth. In a world rife with conflict and division, the true revolution lies in the exchange of ideas. It is not merely about who speaks the loudest or captures the most attention, but rather about whose message resonates most deeply with the hearts and minds of the people. Inspired by this revelation, Mamdani reached out to Karoline, initiating a dialogue that would blend their visions into something greater than what either could have achieved alone. Together, they began to outline a plan that embraced the fervor for change while addressing the pragmatic necessities of governance and community well-being. As the two activists forged a new path together, they demonstrated the importance of listening, adapting, and working collaboratively for a shared vision, proving that even after public disputes, unity could emerge, and that real progress often begins with open dialogue and mutual respect. The stage was set for a new kind of revolution, one that honored both passion and reason, and promised a brighter future for all.